Could we have the sun and the moon on the same property? Let's go. Welcome to the Branded Market Podcast, the show for short-term rental owners who want to turn their listings into legacies. I'm your host, Allie Haney, owner and co-host of multiple properties and founder of Branded Market, where we help Airbnb hosts and short-term rental investors build intentional brands, smart marketing systems, and guest experiences that actually move the needle. Each week, I share practical strategies, real-life stories, and behind-the-scenes insights to help you attract the right guests, increase bookings, and run your rental like a business, so you too can be the best in your brand and your market. Let's dive in. Welcome back, guys. I'm excited to jump into this episode, and we are going to start off with our new weekly segment, which is a Wednesday client win. Recently, I have been able to work with this man named Zach Metcalf, and Zach has a lot of different projects up in the air right now, and I have been so privileged to be able to work on at least two of them with him. So the first one is the micro resort that he has started in Joshua Tree, California. We came up with a name, a full brand identity, brand strategy, and eventually we will also be creating a direct booking site for that property. That's one of his ventures that he's embarking on right now. And the other one is going to be his personal brand. That personal brand, along with it, he is going to be hosting a men's wellness community, and we have named that as well, going through the full brand strategy and how we are going to have brand activations throughout the entire program that he's offering. In and of itself, those two things are huge wins that he has left the corporate world and is pursuing entrepreneurship full time. But even further, I want to talk about a win that he had about a month ago. And that was he was asked to be an international keynote speaker at an event. How incredibly cool is that? And it was like both of his worlds were coming together because this event was for a group called Action Academy. He was asked by the founder of Action Academy, Brian Lubin, to be a keynote speaker to speak about all of the growth that he's seen since he has joined Action Academy. And one of the things that is the foundation of his personal brand and this men's wellness community that's coming to life is finding out your true why. So his keynote was all about talking about all of those people in that Action Academy group, including myself. We are high achievers. We know what the what is. We know what acquisitions we're going after. We know what developments we're doing. But do we lose sight of the why as we are going to pursue the what? And so that's what his keynote was all about. He knocked it out of the park. All of the attendees were raving afterwards. And because I saw this as an opportunity when he told me that he was able to speak as a keynote speaker, I said, we absolutely need to find a way for you to be able to collect some email addresses so that these can be leads for your community in the future when you're ready to launch it. And so we were able to set up Flowdesk email marketing platform for him that we were able to collect those emails so that they could scan from a QR code at the very end of his presentation. And now he has upwards of 20 leads that are excited for him to launch this community when we have the brand strategy all squared away. So congratulations, Zach. I am going to link his personal Instagram there, and then I'll also link the Instagram for the Joshua Tree Micro Resort. I don't want to steal his thunder. There's going to be a big launch once we announce the new name. It did go through a slight rebrand, so we are super excited to launch that here in the coming weeks. But congratulations, Zach. I'm super proud of you, and I'm really grateful to just be a small part of this story on your journey of entrepreneurship. Okay, let's dive into today's episode. Today, we are going to be talking about the evolution of Elysian. If you're watching on YouTube, you see the very first piece of Elysian merchandise. I had a sweatshirt made from an Etsy vendor with our logo for the micro resort in Virginia that we are attempting to develop. I have spoken at length all about Elysian and Luna. Those have been like a whole case study part, like 4-part series episodes. So I'm going to link all of those in the show notes. But for those of you who are listening for the first time, I do want to give a little bit of background on what I'm talking about when I say Elysian so that you guys can understand the duration of this episode. So Elysian is a property that my husband and I purchased back in November of last year, so November 2025. We purchased it in order for it to be a short-term rental. It already had one unit on it already. So it is in the mountains of Virginia, right on the North Carolina-Virginia state line. It is about 5 acres of land. And it's in this like cute little hollow with a bunch of little creeks running all throughout the 5 acres of the property. Like I mentioned, there is one unit there already, and she's pretty quirky. So she's a geodesic concrete dome. She's about 1,600 square feet. She's 2 bed, 1 bath with a loft. We have a couple of amenities out there, including a really nice like hardscaped fire pit. We have a stargazing dome. We have a little like pavilion for grilling out. We also have this little, I call it the reading hollow. It's like a little library shed that's really like cute, cozy, and quaint. So the name of that unit is Luna. She's the moon. And when we purchased this property, we purchased it with the idea that we wanted to add additional unique stays to the property. When I saw the property, I could kind of see like the layout of the land and where perhaps we could put the second unit. And actually, before we even purchased that property last November, I had my eye on what I thought was going to be a unit somewhere, wherever we purchased property. I've been in love with these types of structures for a while now, but I didn't have a property to place it on. That type of structure is called an ÖÖD mirror house, OOD. So I'm going to give you a little bit of background on what this looks like. I'm going to try and do my best to use my words and my my background as an English teacher to paint as clear of a picture for you as possible of what this structure looks like. ÖÖD Mirror Houses, it's a company that was founded out of Estonia in Europe. So it's a European company, but they have a North America headquarters in Houston, Texas. I was able to actually visit their warehouse where they manufacture all of the units for North American properties earlier this year in March. I'm going to go into that as well. But first, I want to kind of paint you this picture of what it would look like to have one on the grounds at Elysian. The mirror house, there's 4 different structures that you could get, all different sizes. The first one is like a glamping mirror house. So it's pretty tight. It's about 98 square feet. And I believe those don't have bathrooms. So that's why it's called glamping. It's not actually like a full standalone unit. The next size up is the standard unit. And that one, I believe, is just over 200 square feet, but it's like a studio layout it has a mini kitchen. It's not like a cooktop, but it has like the sink and the refrigerator, like all of the little like kitchenette amenities. Plus it has the bathroom that the glamping one does not have. The next size up, which is the extended size, which is the size that I envision on the property at Elysian, is almost 300 square feet. So it's basically the signature, but extended. Wow, that's probably why they call it the extended version. And then finally, there's the big, huge one, and that one is called the monolith. And that is actually 2 bedrooms instead of the one bed studio type of layout. So when I was looking through initially, I was thinking, okay, I could really envision the signature here, or the standard one that was like a little bit over 200 square feet. But once I was able to visit the warehouse, I was like, no, I think this one feels like a little too tight, even though it's a studio, right? You can just get in there and feel like maybe the people that are coming here are going to want just a slight bit more space so that it doesn't feel like their bags are directly on top of them. So I was thinking, okay, let's push it to make it the slightly bigger unit, but I envision this to be a couples retreat. So for those of you who have heard more about Luna, is the geodesic dome's name. She, like I mentioned, is a 2 bed, 1 bath with a loft. We have a max guest count of 6 in that unit. And so far, and what we designed the property for was families. We do have 2 sets, or a set of bunk beds in the kids' room. And I think I did almost an entire episode about those dang bunk beds. I'm so excited about them. But we were able to fit like 2 full beds in a 70 square foot space. So that was a pretty big feat. But anyways, I digress. Luna is built for a family. And we wanted, when people came to the property that we are going to be calling Elysian, that they would want to return to be able to collect different experiences at different units. So A, the architecture of the unit itself is going to be vastly different. But B, the experience in each unit is going to be different. The experience at Luna that is family-based, where you have, mom, dad, and the kids, or mom, dad, the kids, and the grandparents, whatever it might be, that's going to be a little bit different, right? Than if mom and dad were to come back and experience the mirror house all to themselves. But they would know about the mirror house once they got onto the property. So that was kind of the idea behind it. Now, in the intro, I'm sure you guys heard me say, what if we had the sun and the moon on the same property? So Luna, she looks like a half moon. Of course, that's where she got her name from. I would absolutely love to start to bring the brand of Elysian to life by calling the mirror house Sol, S-O-L, like the sun. So for those of you who don't know the story behind Elysian, Elysian is meant to be, the property is meant to be heavenly. It's meant to be out of this world, a retreat away from the rest of your life. Fancy Cat, Virginia is where Elysian is, where it's geographically located. And within a 3-hour radius of Fancy Cat, Virginia, where, mind you, there's not much there. However, we have a ton of feeder cities that are coming from 2 to 3 hours away. We have Charlotte, Raleigh, Greensboro, Winston-Salem, Durham, Richmond, Virginia, Bristol, Tennessee, Bristol, Virginia. Like, it's a perfect escape for anyone that's looking to get outside of the city to be in this just heavenly, quiet, creek-filled property. So what I envision for Sol, or the ÖÖD mirror house, is like the opposite of Luna, right? So Luna has really a lot of cool colors, blues, purples, some like silver and gold metallic accents. I want Sol to be the exact opposite of that. So I want it to be all very warm and rich tones. I want it to be like a lot of gold and welcoming, like just warm. Warm is what I want you to feel as soon as you walk into Sol. I guess I skipped over painting the picture for you guys, but let me go back to that. So when you were to walk up to a mirror house during the day, the mirror house is going to reflect all of the natural things that are around in the scenery where that house is placed. So on this property, I did mention that it's in the mountains. However, we're more in a hollow. We don't have the mountain view, but it would very much so be like you were engulfed inside of the forest, regardless of whether you were outside the mirror house and looking at it, or inside the mirror house and being able to see it, a 360 view basically of the entire forest around you. I want you to basically think that this mirror house is going to be camouflaged within the property itself, the scenery itself. On top of that, I mentioned we have these creeks all throughout the property. And when we were there at Thanksgiving for a week and we were renovating Luna, I asked my husband and my dad to walk the property with me. And I said, we got to find a place, more sites for where the future units are going to be. And we found this really beautiful kind of alcove of land that has basically a creek that it curves around. And I would love to be able to place Sol right next to that creek so that as soon as you wake up and roll out of bed, you look over and you are looking directly at the water just trickling down. I can only imagine how absolutely breathtaking that would be. So I feel like I've sold you pretty well on what the next unit should be at Elysian. So finally we can start calling it Elysian, because I feel like some people get confused when I say Luna sometimes and Elysian other times. Elysian is the property name. Luna is the only unit that's on there. So we kind of use them interchangeably at this point, but that won't always be the case once we get Sol to the property. Look, y'all know the tagline for this podcast is turning listings into legacies. We start a short-term rental business for one of two reasons. We either really love real estate or we really love hospitality. But what if I told you that you could do both and do them both well? Lodgify is how I do that. I can run an operationally sound and therefore profitable business while also loving on my guests and leaving some margin for some unreasonable hospitality. Lodgify can help you create your own direct booking site, manage your reservations and guest messages, automate the back end of your business, and stop depending entirely on other platforms that you don't control. Lodgify helps you build your business, something sustainable, something that allows you to love on your guests, and something that helps you turn your listing into a legacy. Use my code BMPOD20 for a special discount until the end of July. That's BMPOD20 for 20% off all yearly Lodgify plans. Cheers, y'all. So the next thing that I want to talk about after I kind of illustrated to you guys what the vision is for the property is the experience that I had while I was at the warehouse back in March of this year. So I was able to fly out for the ÖÖD House open house, and it was a really awesome event. I was a little bit like, I didn't know what to expect because I signed up for it a little bit last minute since it was on my way out to level up your listing. But I was very pleasantly surprised in that it was a curated event. It not only had the opportunity to learn more about the houses and the units, it also had an educational component to it. And so when we first walked in, it was lovely. They had like refreshments and a coffee bar. And then we were able to hear directly from the head of the Houston warehouse, or I guess the whole North America branch. And so he was giving us basically all of the specs surrounding the ÖÖD houses. So one of the things that stood out to me was that, and this was kind of like pertinent in the fact that we lived in an area where hurricanes were before, and also with Hurricane Helene that had gone through Western North Carolina. Like, it was just kind of something on my mind, a question to ask about the durability of the mirror houses. And so one of the things that they said was that the double pane glass is actually rated for up to 120 mile per hour winds, which is hurricane force winds. So that was something that really like kind of calmed my nerves about the actual structural integrity, I guess, of the unit itself. The next thing that I was like a little bit curious about was, and I actually had a sales call with them before I had gone to the open house. So I was able to ask some one-on-one questions with one of their reps as well. And that was super helpful going into the open house. But we are in a wooded area on the side of our mountain. And so I was like, well, of course we'll clear the site, but there's always the potential that like a branch could come and drop onto the unit to hit the side of the unit, and what's going to happen if that type of thing occurs. And apparently the glass itself, it does something called sugar instead of shatter. Wow, say that 5 times fast. It sugars instead of shatters. And so basically you get that like spider web look. So it's not going to actually shatter if like a guest were in there and they, were staying actively during a reservation. That was a reassuring factor to me. And then they also mentioned that you can get replacement glass for it. So I thought that was like really cool and insightful. They went through some of the other specs as well, like the iron that it was, the frame is made out of. They mentioned like the materials that the back is made out of. One of the things questions that I had was maintenance of it. And like, how often do we have to clean the glass, or how often do we have to upkeep that like back part? So if you're like looking at it from the front's going to be the 3 glass sides, and then the back side with the door on it where you would enter has these like, I might butcher this, but it's like the wood shingles. And it was very reassuring that we only have to like oil the back part once a year. And then they suggested cleaning the glass with just Windex like every few months. They said unless like guests are actively like pressing their face up against it, it has some treatment that's going to make sure that it stays relatively clean for it being like out in nature. After we got to hear from the head of the Houston warehouse, we then were able to tour the units, and they had multiple units there for us to walk through. One of which I believe was I think they had the signature, the extended, and the monolith. I definitely remember walking through the monolith because that was the one with the 2 bedrooms. And I thought that it was not right for our specific guest avatar because we wanted it to be that couples experience for a max guest count of 2 for that one. But I did enjoy seeing the layout and the potential like remodel, I guess, for lack of a better word, of that structure if you wanted to use it as a 1-bedroom, but expand it to be even larger. I don't know for sure that that is even possible, but I could really envision how luxurious and like spacious that the monolith would be if it was 1-bedroom. So, but that was also the turning point where I decided that signature was probably not for us and extended was, because I was able to go into both of them side by side and see the space difference. And quite frankly, it's not that big. It's maybe 50 square feet. But to me, in a space that small anyway, that 50 square feet had a really positive impact when you're able to like move around. So just wanted to throw that one out there. Next up, like I mentioned, they had this educational component to this open house event that I was not expecting. And so that educational component was a panel of multiple different speakers. It was led by the head of the Houston warehouse, and he was able to have a couple of different professionals and actual owners on that panel. So we got to see from multiple different points of view what it was like to experience and install an actual unit. So the first speaker that they were hosting was the owner of Paradise Ranch Inn. He is owning and operating a full micro resort with multiple mirror houses on it. I believe it's 4. And he was just very open with his experience and sang the praises of ÖÖD. So that was like really reassuring to hear those positive words. The next person that was on the panel was an architect, but he helped specifically with site planning and with zoning. I thought that was really an interesting combination because when we were on our Kentucky misadventure and going through all of the zoning issues there, I felt like I didn't have very much support throughout that process. And so for someone to be able to share the grand vision that gets as granular as the actual site plan, and then that same person that has the vision, that has the site plan in hand and created it, is also able to accompany you to a zoning meeting and becomes familiar with the local zoning of the municipality or county or state, whatever it is that you are in. That was like a super cool, like just feature, I guess. I didn't realize that those services were ever offered within the same firm. The next person that was on the panel was a feasibility study professional. So let's say that this is still in the idea stage of this project, then she would be able to conduct the study to tell what the average ADR might be, what the average demand might be, the occupancy rate, to be able to allow you to make an educated decision as to whether or not you wanted to move forward to the project, to like site planning or making an offer or what have you. And then the last person that was on that panel was someone who used to be on the Getaway team. And it was Getaway before it was Postcard Cabins, before it was sold to Marriott. So he was like at the very beginning of that kind of like micro resort trend, I guess, if you're going to use that word. But the part that I really loved about his experience was that he was very open as well with what works in terms of the flow of a site, of a micro resort. He was very open with the zoning issues that they had in the past. And he was also a real estate investor himself. So it was like he had the experience on a singular owner operator level, but he also had the experience of being on the ground floor of a company that was eventually sold to Marriott for how recognizable and notable it was within the hospitality industry. So that was a really cool part of it. Now, if we are fast forwarding to the actual execution of this idea, like you guys know, I'm the big idea, the brand girl. I can like dream up a lot of ideas. Now, when it comes to execution, I have to like really buckle down and figure out the logistics of how we would be able to get the mirror house or how we would be able to get Sol to the Elysian property. And that has been probably one of the biggest challenges throughout this process. I feel like the affordability is there for this unit. It's around $150,000 to $160,000 for the unit. Of course, we have to also do the utilities. This property specifically is on well water and is on its own septic. It's not on like county water or county sewer, city sewer, or whatever. So we have to figure out the zoning is not an issue here, thankfully. We've already investigated that. The utilities we have to figure out, and then of course the site plan and where we are going to put it. So some of the details surrounding that is when I was able to have that call with the ÖÖD rep, he put me in touch with their freight person. And so I have a little bit more insight onto how we could potentially get this giant piece of glass to the property itself. So he basically told us that we had one of two options. First option is the prefab option. And with that prefab option, that means that the unit is built in Houston. It's loaded onto a flatbed that is 80 feet long. 80 feet. That is so long. And delivered directly to the property. From there, they would take a crane and lift the unit from the flatbed to a pre-poured concrete pad that we would have to obviously like orchestrate. ÖÖD does not, they don't do the contractors for that. That would be on the property owner. That's option one. Well, I thought that option one was probably not super viable considering the like hairpin turns that they would have to navigate in order to get up there. It would probably jackknife the trailer. It would definitely cause issues with traffic. So I didn't think that that was going to be viable. When I told the freight person this, he was very open and very susceptible to helping me problem solve, which I was super grateful for. And one of the solutions that he offered was to be able to offload the unit itself from the 80-foot flatbed because it is built, they are like natively built onto a chassis. Let's say we did have issues with zoning. I'm going to go off on a tangent here really quickly. If we did have issues with zoning, we could technically have that classified as a non-permanent structure, which sometimes gets you around the zoning of being able to only have a specific amount of structures per acre or whatever the restriction is. Because it's on a chassis, it's essentially, for lack of a better term, like this thing does not look like a camper at all. But it looks like it would be classified as a camper because it's a non-permanent structure and is built directly on a chassis. We would offload it from that 80-foot flatbed onto the chassis that it already exists on, and then we would have to pull it up the mountain to get it to the site. From there, we could either keep it on the chassis and build around it, like a porch or some sort of like hardscaping, really beautiful landscaping. Or again, we could take the crane, take it off the chassis and place it on the concrete pad. So that was like two versions of option one. And then the option two would be to purchase it, not prefab. So purchase a kit and build it directly on site. Of course, that would mean that we would have to hire a GC. We would still have to transport it and get the materials there. But there are some options to problem solve around the challenge of the logistics to actually getting it to the property. So where are we at now in this process? We are still determining what the finances could look like. We are still determining what those logistics are going to look like. Oh, one other thing that I wanted to mention was at the open house, they did tell us that the weight of the units range from 9 tons to 20 tons. And I'm guessing the 20 tons is the monolith. So the extended, which is the one we would like to purchase, is somewhere in between that. My guess would probably be like 11 or 12 tons. And I'm not quite sure what we would need, what vehicle we would need to pull it up the mountain at a 12-ton weight. So that's also something that we're going to have to figure out. But where we stand right now is we are continuing to hunt down the answers to those types of questions. What vehicle can pull 12 tons? What do we need in order to get the utilities run to this site? Of course, like finances, figuring out what that looks like financially for us to be able to run the utilities and purchase the unit itself. So all in all, we are very excited about this potential new addition to the property that we are calling Elysian. Like I said, I've already given her the name Sol, so I'm a little bit attached to her already, and I don't even have her yet. we're super excited for this brand to start to take form outside of just one unit. And we think that ÖÖD could really be the next step. So thank you guys for following along with this journey. If ever you want to discuss a potential idea, regardless of whether that is from the logistical standpoint or what type of unit, or all the way down, of course, to the branding and the marketing for a property that you are looking to purchase or develop, I'm always here. As always, I will link my call calendar to a absolutely free consult call if you want to hop on a call with me just to talk through what that could look like in order to work together. I would absolutely love to do that. So until next time, cheers to being the best in your brand and your market. You just completed another episode of the Brand Market Podcast. If you found this helpful, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find this show and so that you never miss an episode. Don't forget to take a look at the show notes for all the resources mentioned today. See you next Wednesday, and as always, I'm here cheering you on as you build your dream brand and business.